Hey there. Alright, so I've been on record saying that I think negativity bias, which seems pretty rampant, especially in online circles, in real life, people probably don't talk as negatively as they do online. But either way, I've previously said that I'm not a fan of that mentality, and yet I find myself making videos where I criticize lots of things. A little bit hypocritical. So I thought, you know what? Let's change up the formula a little bit. So this ramble is going to be about a game that I really like, despite it being a game that I probably shouldn't like. But we'll get into that. The game is The Division by Ubisoft, the first one specifically. I've played the second one as well, and it is also good for similar reasons, but I do think that the first one is the better of the two. It's not so black and white as that, but we'll get into it. So yes, I really like The Division, and we're going to talk about it because it's fun to talk about things that you enjoy. So why do I like The Division? Well, The Division is like someone basically made a perfect game for me. So firstly, and potentially most importantly, thematically, the game is pretty much perfect, I would say. Takes place in New York City, which is awesome. New York's a cool city. I mean, people will say that it gets used a lot in games, and it does, but I mean, there's a reason for it. It's a cool city. It's a big city. Biggest city in America. I've never been there in real life, but it seems like a cool place, at least in the post-apocalypse. So the city's cool. It's snowy, perpetually snowy. I love the snow. Snow is such I personally am a believer that snow is the coolest, weather event, weather status that you can put in a game. I think it's the most interesting and the most visually appealing, if that makes sense. The other geographical locations are cool too. You've got deserts, swamps, jungles, open plains. They're all good in their own way, but I really like games with snow. And I'm a firm believer that if you're going to have a big open world game, you need to have at least one section of the map at least dedicated to being a snowy area. Just going on a tangent for a moment, when Warzone 1 came out, the Verdansk map, it was placed in Russia. So, I mean, Russia's pretty cold. And there was a northern part of the map that was all snowy. That was cool. And then when Warzone 2 came out, they switched to the Al Mazrah map, which was just all homogeneous desert. And I'm willing to bet that that's a big part of why people didn't like Warzone 2 as much as they liked Warzone 1. It's just a personal theory. I have no information to back that up. And not even necessarily that it didn't include a snow region, but more so that it was just fully homogeneous. It was all desert, which is just kind of bland when it's it was a big map, but it's all the same, Just a bit of a missed opportunity. So yeah, I think if you're going to have a big map, make at least one of the parts snowy, but definitely include diversity in the geography, even if it doesn't make sense, because any open world video game map is going to be significantly smaller than any real world geographical location, So it doesn't really make a bunch of sense to have such diverse biomes so close to each other. But it's a video game. Who cares? Just do it. It looks cool and it's more fun. So that's what I think. Anyway, The Division 1 is all snowy. There's nothing but snow, and it's awesome. I love the snow, and it's done really, really well. This is another thing that I'll get into a little bit later, maybe. I don't know. I have no script for this video, so it's going to be unstructured like all of my videos and all of my rambles. But The Division 1's visuals are phenomenal. I mean, I personally believe that it is still one of the best looking games ever made, and it came out back in 2016, which is crazy. I have to clear my throat for a second. Hold on. I'm going to edit that out. Anyway, it looks so good. But a part of that is like the environmental effects that they have in the game. Like the blizzards and the snow particles and everything. It looks so good. I don't really know how they even achieved it, because there's so many like volumetric effects in the Division games. Both the first one and the second one feature them, but the first one definitely features them more. Is my nose bleeding? Anyway, it isn't. Yeah, there's a ton of volumetric effects. It just looks so good when there's like a huge blizzard going on and you can't see like 10 feet in front of you. It's just so like thematically, it's so cool. It's so great. And you leave like footprints in the snow, and like snow will build up on your character when you're outside, and then it'll melt slowly once you go back inside. I feel like The Division is like one of, if not the most detailed games Ubisoft has ever made, because Ubisoft is kind of known for making games that aren't the highest detail, the highest fidelity games out there. I remember there was another side tangent here just for a moment. There was a period of time where Ubisoft was pretty notoriously known for the graphical downgrades, where they would present the game with some kind of like trailer, or not even a trailer, because most people expect for a trailer to feature like pre-rendered cinematics and stuff. But especially like back 10, 15 years ago, right? But Ubisoft would pretty notoriously like do like a gameplay reveal where it's like, oh, this is the gameplay, and then the game would come out and it looked nothing like that. I think the biggest game to do that was Watch Dogs, the first one. I remember there being a lot of discourse about that, because the trailer, not even the trailer, like I said, I think it was like a gameplay reveal, looked so crazy good, and then the game came out and it looked pretty bad. I don't know if people have just gotten used to that, or if Ubisoft just doesn't really do that anymore. I'm not sure. Maybe we've gotten to the point where the difference between like what's easily achievable graphics is basically on par with anything that they would have done or faked. So there's less of a disparity now. I don't know. But I don't see many people talking about that anymore. So I guess that's just not a thing. But again, I don't really know. I don't keep up with that sort of stuff as much as I used to. That being said, I would say The Division 1 is maybe one of few exceptions to the rule, especially considering when it came out. Like I said, that was back when Ubisoft was pretty notorious for that. They were on a streak of games where they would reveal the trailer and it looked phenomenal, and then the game came out and it didn't look nearly as good. But The Division 1 looks insanely good. The graphics are insane. There is so many details, like not just like the textures are good or like the rendering itself is good, like the lighting model is good and like the materials that everything has are good. It's like, no, like the details, there are so many objects everywhere. Like there's body bags and trash bags and busted up buildings and like metal and cars and trash, and there's like every street in the game is just filled with details. It's insane, especially considering I'm not 100% sure if The Division is a 1-to-1 scale recreation of Manhattan. Obviously, it doesn't include the entirety of the Manhattan Island, but it might be compressed to some degree. But even if it is, it's still a pretty large map, and the level of detail is consistent throughout the entire thing, and it's massive. And like the granularity of the detail is so impressive in the game. And it really does make a difference, I would say, especially when the game is attempting to be like a post-apocalyptic type of game, where it's like, they want that atmosphere of like you're in the end of the world, right? There's a lot of games where that is the theme, like it's the end of the world, but the game doesn't really portray it at all. A good example, and this is just a very recent example, is Battlefield 2042, which leading up to the release of the game, the whole like lore of the game was like, this is World War III, the world is on the brink of total collapse because of like climate change and everything sucks ass. But then you play the game and the maps are like pristine. There isn't a single piece of trash out of place. So it's just that, like, that clash between like what they say the story is and what they show the game actually is. But the Division 1 does it phenomenally, where it's like, it just looks so good and it like pulls you in. You stay locked in the whole time. Now there are some issues to that, and I might touch on that a bit later, but this is mainly a positive video, so we're just going to talk about the things that I like about the game. The visuals are definitely one of them. And there's also a lot of other subtle details, like if you use a suppressor on your gun and you shoot it a lot, it becomes red hot, which is super cool. Even I think the barrel becomes red hot as well, not just the suppressor. That was something that I think they got rid of with the Division 2. At least I never noticed it when playing the Division 2. I don't know why they would have gotten rid of that. But I don't know. So, the theme is perfect for me. I love that post-apocalyptic vibe, you know, and it's like, it's classy post-apocalypse. There's, when it comes to like post-apocalyptic scenarios, they range on a spectrum from like classy, like the Division 1 is, where the story of the Division 1 is there was a big virus outbreak or whatever, a pandemic. Wow, so thematic, but this was 2016, mind you, so COVID was not on anyone's radar at the time. And it wiped out a huge amount of the population, and so the world collapsed into anarchy, and that's the world you live in. There's nothing cheesy about it. It's very reasonable. And then you have things like zombie apocalypse and stuff, where it's like, I don't know, to some people, very cool. To me, not as much, just because zombies aren't real. I mean, I get the appeal, and certain games do it well. But I feel like when you start to break into fantasy elements, you have to be very careful about how you portray it and stuff without it becoming like too cheesy, like I said. And a lot of games aren't able to find that, I feel like. But yeah, the Division 1 thematically is awesome. It's that post-apocalyptic vibe where like the streets are empty because a lot of people have died, but there's still stuff to do. There's still people to fight and stuff like that. It's done well, I would say. So thematically, the game's awesome. Visually, the game's awesome. And then on top of that, in the Division 1, it is perpetually Christmas. I love Christmas. Christmas is my favorite time of year. There's lots of great holidays. I love Halloween. I love Thanksgiving's fun because you get to eat a big meal, but there is no holiday, no time of year that is more like cozy to me than Christmas. I think probably a lot of people would agree with that sentiment. It's just a great time of year. And in the Division 1, it's perpetually Christmas, which means there's Christmas lights all over the map. There's Christmas music playing in a lot of locations, and it's like you can come back to the Division 1 at any point, and it's like always Christmas. It just feels good. I don't know. I love it for that reason. Like I said, it feels like in a lot of ways, the Division 1 is like the perfect game for me specifically. Like someone was like, all right, what are the things that Connor enjoys? Let's just put them all into one game. It's great. I love it so much. The Division 1 also features some of the coolest and like highest fidelity, specifically tempered glass breaking, like physics, if you will. So you have games like GTA, you know, where you've got lots of cars, and cars have tempered glass so that, you know, in the event of like a car accident, when the windows break, you're not getting huge panes of shattered glass that will slice you to smithereens, you know. It's designed to shatter into little tiny pieces that won't do as much damage. It's called tempered glass. And it shatters very differently than normal pane glass because of that property. And not pretty much no game that I've ever played other than the Division 1. And I'm sure it's probably been done because I haven't played every game. But the Division 1 is the only game I've ever played that actually, like, does it right. It looks so cool. And it's cool, too, because... That was a bug. it's cool because there's so many cars like scattered throughout the map, just abandoned cars. And so when you get into these gunfights, a lot of times you're going to be like taking cover behind a car, and then you're shooting like through the windows of the car. So you see it a lot. And it was a really smart decision on their part to do that. Again, that's another one of the things that it seems like they downgraded for the Division 2. The tempered glass shattering physics do not seem nearly as good as the Division 1. Now, there is a small stipulation to that in the Division 1, and this is true for the Division 2 also. But the glass, so, a car, take a sedan, for instance, it's got 4 doors, and then it has the windshield and the rear windshield. In the Division 1, only the door windows can actually, Jesus Christ, I hate little fucking bugs. Only the door windows can actually like shatter. You can still shoot through the windshield and back windshield, but there's no physics, which is a bit of a shame. And then also a small stipulation for the Division 1 specifically is that it seems like there's 2 types of car window in the Division 1. You have police car windows and then any other car window. I think they did this to kind of portray that like police cars are going to have like slightly bullet resistant glass or something. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe they did this specifically because the physics of that tempered glass shattering were like really extensive or something. I don't know. So if they had put it on every car, it would have been too much, maybe. I'm not 100% sure. But the physics of the glass breaking on the police cars is significantly better than the glass breaking on the normal cars. Because I notice the things like that, I'm the guy that goes around and just shoots the windows of the cars because it looks so cool. And then you realize, well, wait, it doesn't look as cool when I do it on a regular car as opposed to a police car. That's another thing about the Division 2. I think this might have been done purposefully because of the setting. I think the Division 1 takes place more recently after the collapse of civilization. And so in the Division 1, there's a lot of cars that still have like intact windows versus the Division 2. Pretty much every single car, of which there are still a lot of cars on the street, but pretty much every single car has a completely shattered windows already. Like there's nothing to shoot out, which is kind of a shame. Like I get it. I think the Division 2 takes place further into the future. So like, yeah, they would have all been shattered at that point, but like it's cool to watch them shatter. Like that's an instance where I'm okay with like removing some of the realism to inject some of the fun, But yeah, the Division 1, it's so cool. It's such a fun game. And like the abilities and stuff, the way it all comes together is really cool. I like it a lot. Another thing about the Division is the UI. I would say, like, in general, Hideo Kojima and his team are like the best at doing that like futuristic UI. But Ubisoft did do an exceptional job with the Division. The UI in that game looks so cool. And like whenever there's a cutscene where they're like showing you a schematic of the city or whatever, and it's got that like digital like hologram look, it looks so cool. And the echoes in the Division 1 look so cool. Like you do that and it's like the hologram of the people, but it's like a point cloud of like all of the information. It's so cool. That is another thing that they downgraded from Division 1 to Division 2. In Division 2, the echoes don't look nearly as cool. It's kind of a similar effect, but instead of it being like a point cloud, it's like a plane cloud, I guess. I don't know. It's like if you replaced all of the points with like triangles rather than points. But I prefer the look of the Division 1. I would say that that's pretty much the whole, like, that's the running theme, in my opinion, between the Division 1 and Division 2. I think Division 1 is a better looking game visually in pretty much every way. And Division 2 plays better because they did improve quite a few things in terms of the gameplay when it came to Division 2. one of the big things that I remember with Division 1 is, so you had all these different types of guns and stuff. You had like your classic assault rifles, SMGs and stuff like that, but then they had like sniper rifles and then marksman rifles, and they were two different like categories. But in the Division, it's all third person, right? And so the game handles it with like it handles shooting with like random spread. So, you aim in a certain direction and the gun has a certain level of inaccuracy, which you can change by like tweaking the gun with attachments and stuff like that. Certain guns are going to be more accurate than others, blah, 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 blah. But anyway, the point being is that you had sniper rifles, which were super accurate for their first shot, but then right after you fired, they became like the most inaccurate guns in the game. But it didn't matter, because with a bolt action rifle, you shoot and then you rack the bolt and then you're ready to shoot again. And then by that time that you had gotten ready for your second shot, you were back to like pinpoint accuracy. But because the marksman rifles, which were semi-automatic, also utilized that same like accuracy system, it made them completely useless in the Division 1. The marksman rifles in the Division 1 are they're just useless. Because you can't shoot them fast at all. If you try to shoot them fast, your bullets are just going everywhere. Like, they're not even going close to where you're aiming. And it's really funny too, because the marksman rifles in the Division 1 had like the highest DPS of any of the weapons in the game. Because the way the game worked is it would show you like the DPS of each weapon rather than like the raw damage it would do. And that was something they changed when they went to the Division 2. Division 2 just tells you the damage of each individual gun rather than the damage per second. The theoretical damage per second of the marksman rifles in the Division 1 were so much higher. They were like 2 to 3 times higher than like even the best assault rifle. But it was like you would never be able to achieve that because you would never be able to shoot it that fast. I'll need to edit that out as well. In the Division 2, they made marksman rifles like their own category, and it had its own like accuracy system, so they fixed that, so marksman rifles are actually usable in the Division 2. There's a few other things that they tweaked. They tweaked the abilities a bit in the Division 2. There's like more and less in the Division 2. There's like, in the Division 1, there were like a ton of different abilities, versus in the Division 2, you have like fewer categories of abilities, but then each category has like a variant. So there might actually be like more variants in the Division 2 than there were in the Division 1. I'm not 100% sure. And they're just slightly different. I would say I potentially liked the variety a bit more in the Division 1, because with the Division 2 system, it's like there's not a hugely various selection to begin with, but then like each one has its own like I was saying, like its own variant. So, but there are some really fun abilities in the Division 2 as well. They're both fun games to play, I would say. But yeah, thematically and like setting wise, geographically, I am much more into the whole snowy New York City than I am the overgrown Washington, D.C., which is what the Division 2 went with. And actually, Division 2 came out with like a New York City DLC, and I recently got it because it was on sale. And I was like, I wonder if it's going to just be basically like the Division 1 again. But sadly, it's not snowy. It's New York City, but it's just regular. There's no snow, which was a little disappointing. But I get it. I mean, the entirety of the Division 1 was snowy New York. I guess they just wanted to mix it up a little bit. But I like the snow. What can I say? It is interesting to me how much I enjoy the Division games, because I absolutely hate games, like especially shooter games, with long time to kill. The faster the time to kill, the better, in my opinion. That's not entirely true. Games where like I don't know, there were custom games that people made with Battlefield 2042 because of the whole portal system where you could kind of like make your own game mode. There were a ton of those where people made it so that every gun was a one-shot kill at all distances, and they ramped up the bullet projectile velocity. So, your gun was like a laser beam and it killed everything in one shot. It's like, that's too far. There's a balance. I would say the optimal time to kill is somewhere between like, I don't know, like 150 to like 250 milliseconds. You start going higher than that and it's like, that ain't it, chief. That ain't it. If your game requires me to shoot someone in the head more than 2 times, that's too many times. And so it's kind of funny to me, with that being my opinion, that I actually enjoy The Division a lot because it has a very slow time to kill. I mean, the thing about The Division is that the like odd enemy that you run into just randomly, you can actually kill them like in a fairly reasonable amount of shots, like somewhere between like 5 and 10 shots, which is on the higher end of what I would consider acceptable personally. But it's okay. But when you go up against like a boss character and you just shoot them with like 700 bullets, it's like, okay, that's when it starts to get a little out of hand. But thankfully that doesn't happen too often in The Division. So I think that's maybe why I don't have too much of an issue with it. I think also there's something to be said about it being PvE rather than PvP. And it is a looter shooter at the end of the day. I think maybe my mindset when going into the game is more like, okay, that's just what looter shooters are. It's, you got your bullet sponge enemies. I just live with it, versus like your standard PvP FPS, which is like, this isn't a looter shooter. I want to kill someone when I shoot them. I've been playing a lot of Apex Legends lately with my siblings. And that game has the most abhorrent time to kill of any game, any first-person shooter I've ever played. It's awful. I hate it. I hate it so much. It's still really fun to play with people. Playing with my siblings is a ton of fun. But the game is infuriating because when I shoot someone, 20 times and they just run away, that doesn't feel good. It's insane. That game has the most insane time to kill. You can shoot someone in the head like 10 times and not kill them if they have like red shields. It's like, oh, okay, we're in Goofy land where the bullets don't do damage. Yeah. But this is a positive video. We're talking about The Division. The Division is cool, despite it having a long time to kill. That's probably its biggest flaw. If The Division was like, if it had a fast time to kill, like a reasonable time to kill, where like one shot headshot kills and like 2 to 3 shots to the body, with like your standard rifles and stuff, it would be perfect. It'd be perfect. I would never need to play another game other than The Division. There'd be no advantage. There were a lot of other things that they improved with The Division 2 versus The Division 1, and it makes me want them to like remake The Division 1, but with like all of the mechanics of The Division 2. So like the big thing with The Division 2 that they really improved, I would say, was like the moment-to-moment gameplay where you're just like exploring the city. In The Division 2, there's like so many more like things to loot, which is just more exciting and fun. But then on top of that, there's like a bunch of like random encounters. They do get a little repetitive because there aren't a huge variety of them, but it's still a lot more fun than The Division 1, where you're basically just running around in an empty city and you'll come across the odd like group of bad guys that are just like randomly spawned in. In The Division 2, you have like the control points and everything, and you have like random encounters like public executions and stuff that you can try and prevent, and you can see like the enemy movements, like, oh, there's a enemy convoy coming over here, so like you can go and intercept it. Stuff like that is really cool. I enjoy stuff like that, and so that is a lot better with The Division 2. Like I said, if you took the visuals of The Division 1 and mixed it with the gameplay of The Division 2, it would be basically the perfect game, in my opinion. The only thing that would make it better is, like I said, reducing the time to kill, and then potentially also, like, I don't know. I guess this is... See, I was going to say, like, reduce the amount of, like, loot spam, I guess. But that's kind of the point of a looter shooter. So at that point, we're just, like, completely changing the game. So I'm not even going to bother saying that. But yeah, they're fun games. I just like them. I like them a lot. It's just fun to roam around in perpetually Christmas, snowy New York City. And those visuals. The visuals of, like, those volumetric effects when there's, like, a blizzard going on and you're, like, getting into a gunfight between cars and there's, like, people all over the place. It's, like, it's so fun. It's so much fun. It just feels good. And it's funny, too, because, like I said, I genuinely believe that The Division 1 is one of the best-looking games ever made, even today. I mean, it's been 8 years since it came out. And I recently, because there was some huge sale on the Ghost Recon games that they recently released, as in within, like, the past 4 years or whatever. I don't know exactly when they came out. They're not super new or anything, but they were like $5. So I was like, I'll give it a try. For $5, that's not bad. I turned that game on expecting it to look pretty similar to The Division because they're made by the same studio and they're pretty similar games. I think Ghost Recon is more of that, like, faster time to kill. It's like a faster time to kill Division almost, which, you know, it was like for $5, it could be the perfect game. But I turned it on and it looks like shit. I'm sorry to whoever worked on that game. It looks bad. I don't know if it's just because I'm playing on console. I mean, it said that it was optimized for Xbox Series X and whatnot. So usually those games look pretty good, even if, like, their Xbox One and PS4 counterparts don't look that impressive by today's standards. But the games looked bad. Like, the game looked bad. It looked like a mobile game. It just looked so much worse than The Division. I think the reason The Division is able to get away with making its visuals so good is because it takes place in a very densely urban environment. You know, it's that New York City where the streets are super narrow. And so the game doesn't have to render anything other than, like, what's directly in front of you. And so it allows them to get away with a lot more. Which, I mean, you know, that's not my fault. Like, just set every game in New York if we can get visuals like that. I don't care. I mean, New York's a cool place. I don't mind it. But yeah, I mean, obviously the visuals of a game aren't as important as the actual gameplay. But the visuals can go a long way into, like, making you want to continue playing, you know, and it does have an effect on, like, the emotional satisfaction of playing the game. Like I said, The Division 1 is so consistent in its portrayal, and it really makes you feel like you're living in a world that is torn down to its roots, like there is nothing left. I turned on Ghost Recon, and it was like, oh, this is just some generic open world. There's nothing special about it. You know, it was just, I don't know. This could also be, like, a non-issue. Maybe I'm just looking at things a little weird, but there was another element that made me really not like playing Ghost Recon. I actually ended up refunding it, so I don't even own it anymore. But the UI was bad, and, like, the tutorial, if you want to call it that, like, the new player experience in the Ghost Recon, I think it was Breakpoint, I don't know, maybe it was Wildlands, whichever one is the most recent one. I can never tell them apart. They look so similar and they're named so similar. It's just like, it's all just mush in my brain. But the new player experience is awful. You get through their tutorial, which is the most, like, asinine part of the game, which tutorials rarely are really that interesting, but whatever. And then it puts you in the game, and there's, like, a million trillion UI elements, and it's like trying to tell you how to like set up your AI squad, and it's like, this is too much. I don't know what the fuck you want me to do. There's like 10 million people with icons above their heads. Like, am I supposed to talk to these people? And then you go and talk to them, and it gives you the most boring, shitty, like, exposition dump where this guy's like, I'm army man. I'm badass army man, and we're in this shit, and we need you to get us out of this shit. It's like, can I skip it? And I couldn't skip it. You can't skip it. In fact, actually, I think you can skip it, except when you try to skip it, it just exits, and then you have to start it over and listen to the whole thing over again. I got like an hour into the game, and I was like, no. All right, this ain't it, Chief. Sorry, this just isn't it. So yeah, I refunded that one pretty quickly. But the Division 1, man, that's a good game. that's a good game. What was I gonna say? I was gonna say something else. Oh yes. I guess the writers at Ubisoft are just not. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's just not doing it for me. I love the Division 1. I love the Division 2. They're great games. I enjoy playing them. But one thing about them that I cannot stand is the corniness of the dialogue and the story. It's so weird. First of all, the whole idea that like when you're doing a mission, you're like constantly hearing and conversing with like the main boss bad guy that like you're going up against. It's just so fucking weird. Like, what is this? Like, what are we Skyping? Like, why am I like talking to the bad guy? It just doesn't make any sense. But then on top of that, as if that wasn't bad enough, the dialogue is just like, I am bad guy and you're gonna get stomped. But it's so like G-rated, which is so weird to me because the visuals of the world, like I said, the visuals of the Division, they don't really hold back. There's like body bags and dead bodies everywhere and rats and dogs and shit everywhere. I mean, it looks like a pretty like mature thing. But then the dialogue is like Teletubby land, where the bad guys are like, you are doo-doo head. I will destroy you. It's like, this is like the baddest motherfucker in the whole city. Like, this is what Ubisoft thinks like criminals talk like. Like, it's just so weirdly juvenile, and it's a massive disconnect from like the visuals of the world. So I think the writers at Ubisoft just, at the very least, they don't quite understand like what makes someone evil or how an evil person talks, which I suppose isn't the worst thing in the world. It could be a sign that they're just good, honest people. But it does make playing their games, which are often filled with like cliche bad guys, like just a little less satisfying. It's like, okay, didn't realize we were going up against a 12-year-old bad guy. Like, that's what it sounds like. It sounds like some middle schooler. It's pretty rough. But if you can ignore that, which it's easy enough to ignore, the story of the Division really doesn't matter. I mean, like, thematically, the lore is cool. I like I said, that whole like virus that breaks down humanity and stuff like that, that's cool. But then the story of the game, which is, I am good guy. I will stand up for everyone that is good and destroy everyone that is bad. I mean, you mercilessly just kill every single person you come across in the Division games. It's kind of funny because in the Division 2, there's like I was saying, there's way more like dynamic events. Like, you'll come across people that are like doing things rather than just like enemies that were spawned in for no reason, you know? And sometimes in the Division 1, it'll spawn in like a single bad guy that's labeled as like, oh, he's looting something, like he's scavenging the landscape alone. And you can just walk up right behind him and just blast him away and you get points. It's like, it's just one guy. Like, if I come across like a group of guys and I have to, take them out, that's one thing. But if I come across like a singular guy and I have him with his pants down, it's like, shouldn't I like try to negotiate with him? Like, you're coming with me or something, try to persuade him to our side. But no, it's just like you have to kill them. I don't know. It's just kind of funny and weird. That's the classic Ubisoft game design where it's like, it's rarely ever deeper than just like, shoot bad guy. And I mean, like I said, I still really, really enjoy the Division games, so it works, but it would be cool if there were some elements where you could like, you know, like in Metal Gear Solid 5, how you can like knock people out and then take them to your base and then convert them to your side. It's like that sort of thing. It's like, you don't have to kill them if you don't want to. I like having the option. There's also something to be said about the fact that in Ubisoft games, it's like, you have this gorgeous open world. Well, at least in the case of the Division, you have a really detailed open world. But I don't know if this is a side effect of the fact that the game is like a cover shooter, so there's like hard-coded things that you can take cover against rather than it being more like freeform where you can just like crouch your character and then take physical cover behind like things just by on your own volition. Like, no, there's a hard-coded cover system, like you snap to things. So I think it might just be because of that, but the world is so sticky. And by that I mean, like, if the game doesn't want you to go somewhere, you aren't going there. And you can get like very easily like not trapped, but like stuck in places where it's like, oh, invisible wall, like I can't step up on this tiny little thing that I should definitely be able to step up on, you know. It's like stuff like that is a little disappointing. It would be cool if it was more like just let you explore, you know, especially considering the game is so detailed. Like, it seems like a really fun world to just explore. So that's not quite there, unfortunately, but it's still a great game. Still a great game. Like I said, I enjoy it a lot. Like I said, it's a game I feel like I should not like, because like gameplay wise, it kind of goes against all the things that I enjoy, which is like the freedom of gameplay, like having choice. There's not a lot of choice in the Division. I enjoy fast time to kill. The Division is not a fast time to kill game, and I enjoy like meaningful exploration where like I get to explore this world, you know, something like Skyrim, where the developers put in a bunch of like random collectibles everywhere, and like not collectibles. When I hear the word collectible, I think of like stuff that goes onto your like Xbox account, like your Microsoft account, like you unlocked an achievement. Like an achievement is a collectible. To me, I want like in-game items. I don't give a shit about achievements and collectibles and shit like that. I want stuff that I can actually use. I want like in-game items that are like, this is the only place in the game where you can find these gloves or these boots or whatever. It's like, that's the sort of stuff that I love. The Division doesn't really have much of that because it's a looter shooter, so, you know, you're going to find the same thing in a lot of different locations, but with like slightly different stats. So it's like, yeah, whatever. So like, there's a lot of reasons why I probably should not like the Division, but I still do. I love it. It's such a good game. It's such a classic game. Like I said, it's so cozy. It's such a cozy game, especially the first one. The first one is just so cozy. But yeah, I thought I would just share a positive vibe video talking about one of my favorite games. Hopefully you enjoyed. I think that'll be it though. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you later.